she was nothing but a healer without a wolf, scrubbing blood from the pack-house floors when destiny arrived bleeding at her feet, and when the dying black wolf she saved transformed under the moonlight. The most powerful alpha king in existence dropped to his knees and whispered the words that would shatter everything. My savior. My mate. The icy water turned pink as Lyra wrung out the cloth for what felt like the 100th time that night. Her knees ached against the stone floor of the Crimson Ridge Pack's infirmary, but she didn't dare complain. Healers without wolves didn't get to complain, they got to be grateful they weren't exiled entirely. Still pretending you belong here, wolfless? The voice cut through the antiseptic air like a blade. Lyra didn't need to look up to know who it was. Vera Blackthorn, the Beta's daughter, never missed an opportunity to remind Lyra of her place or lack thereof. The floors won't clean themselves, Lyra replied quietly, keeping her eyes down. She'd learned long ago that meeting Vera's gaze only made things worse. But Vera's boot came down on Lyra's hand, pressing it against the cold stone. Lyra bit back a cry of pain. You missed a spot, Vera said sweetly, grinding her heel harder. Right there, where real wolves bled defending our pack. Wolves with actual power, unlike certain frauds who play with herbs and pretend it makes them useful. The other wolves in the infirmary laughed. They always did. Lyra felt the familiar burn of humiliation, but something else stirred beneath it tonight. Something that had been growing stronger lately, especially during the full moons. A pull she couldn't explain, a restlessness that made her skin feel too tight. That's enough, Vera. The head healer, Mira, entered carrying supplies. Though Mira's tone was stern, Lyra caught the flicker of disappointment in her eyes, not at Vera, but at Lyra, for once again being too weak to stand up for herself. Vera removed her boot, leaving Lyra's hand throbbing. Just trying to help our little wolfless wonder remember her station. After all, tomorrow's the lunar gallows ceremony. Wouldn't want her getting ideas about attending. The lunar gallows. Lyra's stomach twisted. The sacred ceremony where unmated wolves could challenge for position in the pack hierarchy. Where warriors proved their worth and sometimes found their fated mates among the spectators. Where someone like her would never be welcome. Oh, didn't you hear? Vera's smile turned vicious. Theron specifically requested you serve drinks at the ceremony. Said he wanted to make sure everyone sees what happens to weak bloodlines in our pack. Theron Blackwood, their alpha, the man who'd taken over Crimson Ridge Pack after defeating the previous alpha 5 years ago. He ruled through strength and fear, believing only the powerful deserved to survive. I'm scheduled for healing duties tomorrow, Lyra managed. Not anymore. Vera pulled out an official scroll with the Alpha's seal. Direct orders. You'll serve the warriors who actually matter, and maybe if you're lucky, you'll get to watch when I claim my position as lead warrior. Some of us were born to rule, others, she looked Lyra up and down with disgust, were born to kneel. As Vera sauntered away, her friends following like shadows, Lyra finally allowed her hands to tremble. She looked at the bruise already forming on her skin and wondered, not for the first time, why the moon goddess had cursed her to be born into a wolf pack without a wolf. Lyra, Mira said softly, perhaps you should go. It's nearly midnight, and you'll need rest for tomorrow. Rest. As if she could rest, knowing tomorrow she'd be paraded around like a failure, serving drinks to wolves who saw her as nothing more than a cautionary tale. But as Lyra gathered her supplies and headed for the door, that strange pulling sensation intensified. It felt like something calling to her from beyond the pack boundaries, from the dark forests that bordered their territory. She paused at the infirmary's exit, looking toward the tree line. The full moon hung heavy above the woods, and for just a moment she could have sworn she heard howling, but not from their pack. This sound was different, deeper, more primal, and filled with such pain that it made her healer's instincts scream. "Go home," the rational part of her mind insisted. "You're imagining things because you're upset." But her feet were already moving toward the forest, that inexplicable pull growing stronger with each step. The moonlight seemed to create a path through the trees, beckoning her forward. That's when she heard it clearly, a sound that made her blood run cold. The growl that erupted from the darkness wasn't just wounded, it was dying, and something deep in Lyra's bones recognized it as important. Though she couldn't say why, her hands started glowing with pale light she'd never possessed before. Every instinct screamed at her to run. A wounded wolf was dangerous, especially one that didn't belong to their pack. But Lyra's healer nature overrode her fear. She couldn't ignore suffering, even if it meant risking her own life. She pushed through the underbrush, following the pain sounds deeper into the forest. The moonlight filtered through the canopy, creating shifting patterns. And then she saw it. The wolf was massive, larger than any she'd ever seen, even larger than Alpha Theron in his shifted form. Its fur was pure black, so dark it seemed to absorb the moonlight rather than reflect it. Blood matted its side, spreading in a pool beneath its body. 3 arrows protruded from its flesh, and claw marks raked across its flank. But it was the wolf's eyes that stopped Lyra cold. They held an intelligence that seemed almost ancient, a depth of knowing that went beyond animal or human. The wolf's lips pulled back, revealing fangs the size of daggers, and it growled weakly. "I'm not here to hurt you," Lyra whispered, raising her hand slowly. "I'm a healer. Please, let me help." The wolf's growl intensified, but it couldn't move. The blood loss was too severe. That's when Lyra noticed something that made her heart skip. The arrows weren't ordinary hunting arrows. They were silver-tipped, engraved with symbols she recognized from ancient texts. Wolfsbane poison. Someone hadn't just hunted this wolf. They'd tried to assassinate it. "Who did this to you?" she breathed, stepping closer despite the danger. The wolf's eyes tracked her movement, and she could see it trying to shift, trying to return to human form, but the wolf's bane prevented transformation. It would die as a wolf if she didn't act fast. Lyra dropped to her knees beside the massive creature, her hands already reaching for the first arrow. The moment her skin made contact with the wolf's fur, electricity shot through her entire body. Not painful, but awakening, like something inside her that had been sleeping her whole life suddenly opened its eyes. The wolf stopped growling, its eyes widening in what looked like shock. "I know," Lyra whispered, though she didn't understand what she knew. "I feel it too, but I need to get these out, and it's going to hurt." She gripped the first arrow and pulled. The wolf's body convulsed, and its howl of pain echoed through the forest. Black blood poured from the wound, but Lyra's hands were already pressed against it, and that's when the impossible happened. Pure moonlight erupted from her palms, not the faint glow of a regular healer, but brilliant radiance that made the forest shine. The light sank into the wolf's flesh, and she watched in amazement as the wound began to close. "How am I doing this?" she gasped. She'd never had power like this. She'd never had any real power at all. The wolf whimpered, and she realized she couldn't stop now. The second arrow came out easier, and again her hands blazed with healing light. But it was the third arrow, the one closest to the wolf's heart, that changed everything. As she pulled it free, her mind was suddenly flooded with images, battles she'd never seen, places she'd never been, a throne made of moonstone and shadow. and a voice, deep and commanding, echoing in her thoughts. "You're finally here." She jerked back, gasping, but kept her hands pressed to the wound. The wolf was staring at her with an expression that was far too human, too knowing. "What are you?" she whispered. Before the wolf could respond, if it even could, she heard voices approaching through the trees. Her blood went cold as she recognized them, patrol wolves from her pack. "The blood trail leads this way," someone called. "Whatever it is, it's badly wounded. Alpha Theron wants it brought back," another voice replied. "Dead or alive. He says there's been a massive wolf spotted near our borders. Could be a spy from the Shadow Crown Pack." The Shadow Crown Pack. Lyra's heart raced. They were the most powerful pack existence, ruled by an alpha king so formidable that other alphas bowed to him. But they were also far to the north, hundreds of miles away. What would one of their wolves be doing here? The black wolf tried to rise, baring its fangs toward the approaching voices, but it was still too weak. It would be slaughtered if they found it like this. "You have to run," Lyra urged, but the wolf collapsed back down, breathing labored. The voices were getting closer. She could hear multiple sets of paws padding through the underbrush. In moments, they'd be discovered. That's when the wolf did something that shocked her. It pressed its massive head against her hand and whined, a sound so vulnerable and trusting that it broke her heart. It was asking for her help. This magnificent, powerful creature was putting its life in her hands. "I won't let them hurt you," she promised, and she meant it. Standing up, she did the only thing she could think of. She started singing. It was an old healer's lullaby her grandmother had taught her before she died, back when Lyra still had hope that her wolf would emerge. The melody was haunting, designed to calm injured wolves. But as her voice rose through the trees, something else happened. The moonlight around them began to shift and dance, creating a barrier of mist. The black wolf's form became hazy, almost invisible, hidden within the supernatural fog. "What's that sound?" One of the patrol wolves called out, confusion in his voice. "I don't. I feel strange," another replied. Sleepy, Lyra kept singing, pouring every ounce of her will into the song, and one by one, she heard the patrol wolves collapse, overcome by the lullaby's power. When she finally stopped, the forest was silent, except for the black wolf's breathing. But the effort had cost her. She swayed on her feet, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. The healing light in her hands flickered and began to fade. "No!" she gasped, falling back to her knees beside the prapor. "Wolf, not yet. You're not fully healed." The wolf's eyes met hers, and in them she saw something that made her breath catch gratitude. Yes, but also recognition, as if it had been searching for her as much as she'd unknowingly been searching for it. With the last of her strength, she pressed both hands to the final wound, pouring everything she had into healing this mysterious creature. The moonlight blazed one final time, so bright she had to close her eyes. When she opened them again, the wolf was beginning to shift. The bones cracked and reformed while moonlight writhed around the shifting form. And when the transformation ended, Lyra found herself staring at the most devastatingly beautiful man she'd ever seen. But it was the intricate crown tattoo covering his entire back, pulsing with actual power, that made her realize she'd just saved the Alpha King himself. He lay on the forest floor, unconscious but breathing steadily. His body was perfect, not just attractive, but literally flawless, as if carved from marble by the moon goddess herself. Dark hair fell across his face, and even in sleep, power radiated from him in waves that made the air itself feel charged. But Lyra barely had time to process what she was seeing before she heard more voices, lots of them, approaching from the opposite direction of her pack's territory. "Find him!" a commanding voice roared. "The king's blood trail ends here." King! They'd called him king. Lyra's hands shook as she grabbed the torn remains of her cloak, draping it over the unconscious man's form. She had to hide him, had to protect him until… Well, what do we have here? She spun around to find herself surrounded by massive wolves, all bearing the distinctive midnight blue markings of the Shadow Crown pack. But these shifted back to human form, and she found herself facing a group of the most intimidating warriors she'd ever seen. The one who'd spoken stepped forward, a scarred man with calculating eyes, a little healer playing with forces beyond her understanding. "Where is he, girl? Where is our king?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Lyra said, trying to keep her voice steady, even as she positioned herself protectively in front of the unconscious Alpha King. The scarred man laughed coldly. "You think we can't smell him? Can't feel his presence? Move aside or I'll…" "You'll what, Matthias?" The voice was weak but commanding, and everyone froze. Behind Lyra, the Alpha King had awakened. He rose slowly, the cloak falling away to reveal his magnificent form, and even barely conscious. His presence made everyone, including his own warriors, take a step back. "Your Majesty!" Matthias immediately dropped to one knee, and all the other warriors followed. "We've been searching for you. The assassination attempt failed, obviously," the king said dryly, his eyes intense and penetrating, fixed on Lyra. "Thanks to her." "Her?" Matthias looked at Lyra with disbelief. This wolfless healer, but how could she… Wolfless? The king's expression darkened. He moved closer to Lyra, each step predatory and graceful despite his recent injuries. "Is that what they told you? That you have no wolf?" I don't," Lyra stammered, overwhelmed by his proximity. He smelled like pine forests and winter storms, like power itself. "I've never shifted. Never." He reached out and touched her face, and the moment his skin met hers, that same electricity from before shot through them both. But this time, she heard it, a voice inside her mind, primal and ancient, howling in recognition. "Mate, mate, mate." The king's eyes widened, and she knew he heard it too. "They bound your wolf," he breathed, fury and awe mixing in his voice. "Someone actually dared to bind your wolf." "What?" Lyra's legs felt weak. That can't be." "Your Majesty," Matthias interrupted urgently. "We need to get you back to safety. The Poison Fang Alliance is still…" Silence. The king didn't look away from Lyra. "Tell me your name." "Lyra," she whispered. "Lyra Silverwood." Something flashed in his eyes. Recognition? Rage? Silverwood. Of course. The last of the Moon Healer's bloodline, hidden away in this backwater pack. He turned to Matthias. "Do you know what they've done? They've bound a Moon Healer's wolf. They've kept her as a servant." A howl cut through the night, Alpha Theron's summoning call. All pack members were required to respond immediately or face punishment. "I have to go," Lyra said, panic rising. "If I don't respond, you're not going anywhere," the king growled. "You're coming with me." "I can't. My pack." "The pack that's abused you? That's hidden your true nature?" His voice was rising with each word, power crackling around him. "They're not your pack, they're your captors." More howls joined the first. The patrol wolves she'd enchanted must have awakened and reported back. "Please," Lyra begged, though she wasn't sure what she was begging for. "I don't understand any of this. I don't even know your name." "Caspian," he said, his voice softening as he looked at her. "Caspian Darkwater. Alpha King of the Shadow Crown Pack, and High Sovereign of the Northern Territories. He stepped closer, and she could feel something humming between them, undeniable and overwhelming. And you, Lyra Silverwood, are not wolfless. You're one of the most powerful beings ever born, a direct descendant of the Moon Healers, who once stood beside Alpha Kings as equals. Someone has committed a grave crime against you. The howling was getting closer now. Lyra could hear paws thundering through the forest, dozens of them. Your Majesty, Matthias urged, we're outnumbered. If the Crimson Ridge Pack attacks, let them come, Caspian snarled, and his power flared so intensely that several trees cracked. I'd love to have a word with the Alpha, who thought he could hide my mate from me. Mate? Lyra's head was spinning. But I'm nobody. I'm just, you're everything, Caspian said fiercely. And they knew it. That's why they bound your wolf when you were a child. That's why they've kept you weak and beaten down. They were hiding you. The first wolves burst through the trees, Vera leading them, her gray wolf form snarling. But the moment she saw Caspian standing there, radiating power like a god of war, she skidded to a halt, her snarl turning into a whimper. More wolves emerged, surrounding them, but none dared to attack. They could all feel what he was, an apex predator that could destroy them all without breaking a sweat. Then Alpha Theron himself appeared, his massive brown wolf form pushing through his warriors. He shifted back to human form, his face purple with rage. You dare trespass on Crimson Ridge territory? He growled at Caspian, but then his eyes fell on Lyra, standing close to the Alpha King, and his expression turned calculating. Ah, I see. The little healer has been spreading her legs, for he never finished the sentence. Caspian moved so fast he was a blur, his hand wrapping around Theron's throat and lifting him off the ground. Finish that sentence, Caspian said quietly, dangerously. I dare you. But as Theron choked in his grip, more wolves poured into the clearing, hundreds of them, from multiple packs. Lyra recognized the symbols on their fur, the Poison Fang Alliance, the same ones who'd tried to assassinate Caspian. They'd walked right into a trap. Did you really think we'd let you leave alive, Alpha King? The voice belonged to a woman emerging from the shadows, Ravenna Poisonfang herself, the most notorious pack traitor in history. And the moment Lyra saw the ancient collar in her hands, she understood. They hadn't just come to kill Caspian. They'd come to enslave him. Caspian dropped Theron, who crumpled to the ground, gasping. The Alpha King's entire body tensed as he faced this new threat, his warriors forming a protective circle despite being vastly outnumbered. Ravenna, Caspian's voice was deadly calm. Still playing with forbidden magic, I see. The woman was hauntingly beautiful in a poisonous way, white hair that seemed to leach color from everything around her, and eyes like pale venom. She held the collar up, and Lyra could see the ancient runes carved into the metal, pulsing with dark energy. A subjugation collar, Ravenna purred. Haven't seen one in centuries, have you? The last Alpha King who wore one became nothing more than a pet. You orchestrated all of this, Caspian said, pieces clicking together. The assassination attempt was meant to drive me here, where Theron would. His eyes narrowed as he looked at the Crimson Ridge Alpha. You're working with her. Theron wiped blood from his mouth, grinning despite his bruised throat. The Poison Fang Alliance offered something I couldn't refuse: control over the Northern Territories once you're gone. All I had to do was provide the bait. Bait? Lyra's stomach turned to ice. You, little healer, Theron laughed cruelly. We've known what you were since the day your grandmother died. Last of the Moon Healers, bearer of the lunar gift. Ravenna's spies confirmed you were Caspian's destined mate years ago. We just had to keep you broken and wait for the right moment. The betrayal hit Lyra like a physical blow. You knew? All this time, you knew I had a wolf? Of course we knew. Your grandmother begged me to protect you before she died, told me everything. Your bloodline, your power, the prophecy about the moon healer who would stand beside the Shadow King. Theron's smile was vicious. So I bound your wolf with black magic when you were 5 years old. You were unconscious for weeks. We told everyone you had a fever. You never remembered. Lyra felt something crack inside her chest. The years of humiliation, of being called wolfless, of scrubbing floors while others pitied or mocked her, it had all been a lie. A deliberate, calculated lie. You're monsters, she whispered. We're survivors, Ravenna corrected. The age of Alpha Kings is ending. Bring him to me. The poison fang wolves surged forward. Caspian's warriors fought valiantly, but they were outnumbered 20-1. Caspian himself was a force of nature, every strike devastating, every movement lethal. Bodies flew through the air as he defended himself, but even he couldn't fight off hundreds. That's when Lyra felt it, that same healing light from before, but now it was rage-fueled, burning through her veins like molten starlight. Stop, she said quietly. No one heard her over the battle. Stop, she said louder, and the light began to leak from her skin. Still, the fighting continued. She watched Matthias take a devastating blow, saw Caspian bleeding from multiple wounds. As more and more enemies pressed in, they were going to lose. They were going to collar him, enslave him, and it would be because of her, because she'd been the bait in a trap years in the making. I said stop. The scream that tore from Lyra's throat wasn't entirely human. It was accompanied by an explosion of pure moonlight, so intense that everyone, friend and foe alike, was blown backward. The light formed a dome around her, pulsing with raw power. Inside her mind, she heard a voice, her wolf, freed from its chains by pure fury. They caged us. They humiliated us. They used us. Make them pay. No, Lyra gasped. Fighting for control as power she didn't understand coursed through her. This isn't make them pay. The moonlight began to change, darkening to the color of a lunar eclipse. Where it touched the ground, the earth itself cracked and split. Several poison fang wolves who got too close simply ceased, not killed, but erased, as if they'd never existed at all. The void gift. Ravenna breathed, real fear flickering across her face for the first time. She has the void gift of the moon healers. Even Caspian was staring at Lyra in awe. The prophecy, he whispered. Not just a moon healer, but the eclipse bringer. Lyra couldn't control it. The power was too much, too sudden after years of suppression. She was going to kill everyone, including Caspian's warriors, including Caspian himself. Lyra! Caspian's voice cut through the chaos. He was walking toward her, directly into the sphere of destructive energy. His skin began to burn where the eclipse light touched him, but he didn't stop. Lyra, listen to me. You're not a weapon. You're my mate, and I need you to come back to me. I can't control it, she sobbed, tears streaming down her face as the power raged. He reached her despite the pain, pulling her against his chest. The moment their bodies connected, something flared to life between them, and she felt his strength flowing into her, steadying her, anchoring her. We control it as one, he whispered against her hair, and miraculously the eclipse light began to calm, shifting back to pure moonlight before fading. Lyra collapsed against him, drained, but the damage was done. Half of the Poison Fang Alliance had fled in terror, and the other half knelt in submission. But Ravenna still stood, the collar glowing in her hands. Yet instead of attacking, she did something unexpected. She dropped the collar and pulled out an ancient scroll. "The Midnight Prophecy," she announced, unrolling it. "Written by the first moon healer 1,000 years ago. I didn't come just to capture you, Alpha King. I came because my daughter is among the feral wolves, mad with grief after losing her mate 50 years ago. The prophecy speaks of an eclipse bringer who can cure the feral curse, the curse that turns wolves feral if they lose their mates," Caspian explained to Lyra, his arms tightening around her. "Thousands of wolves in exile, unable to die, unable to heal. Cure my daughter," Ravenna said, her composure finally cracking, "and the Poison Fang Alliance will serve you. Continue to fight us, and we'll wage war until the continent burns." Before Lyra could respond, another voice cut through the tension, young, terrified, and familiar. "Lyra? Lyra, help!" The scream belonged to Iris, the only person in Crimson Ridge who'd ever shown Lyra genuine kindness. And when the young Omega was dragged into the clearing with a knife to her throat, Lyra realized with sickening clarity that everyone she'd ever cared about had just become leverage against her. "No." Lyra tried to lunge forward, but Caspian held her back. The one holding Iris was Vera, her face twisted with jealous rage. "Look at you," she spat at Lyra. "Hours ago you were nothing, and now you think you're some prophesied savior?" "Vera, please," Lyra begged. "Iris has nothing to do with this. She's been sneaking you food for years, treating you like you mattered." Vera's knife pressed harder against Iris's throat, drawing a thin line of blood. "Well, let's see if you matter enough to save her." "That's enough," Theron commanded, finally standing despite his injuries. "The girl belongs to my pack. She cannot leave without my permission until she's 25 or formally rejected by the pack. Unless," he paused dramatically, "she participates in the lunar gallows ceremony tonight. If she defeats our pack's chosen champion in combat, she wins her freedom." "She just discovered her wolf exists," Caspian snarled. "She can't possibly—" "I'll do it." Lyra stepped out of Caspian's embrace, moonlight flickering under her skin. "But when I win, Iris comes with me." "Then it's settled," Theron declared. "The fight begins in 1 hour, and your opponent will be me." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even Ravenna looked surprised. "I accept," Lyra said before Caspian could protest. As the Crimson Ridge wolves retreated to prepare, Ravenna approached. "Your power responds to emotion, but it feeds on intent. Decide what you're fighting for, revenge or freedom." Then she melted back into the shadows with her forces. "You have an hour," Caspian said, his voice strained. "Let us help you prepare." "Can you teach me to shift?" Lyra asked. "I can do better than that," a new voice said. They all turned to see an elderly woman emerging from the forest, her hair silver white and her eyes the exact same shade as Lyra's. "Grandmother?" Lyra breathed. "No, that's not possible. You died." "You were at a funeral," the woman corrected, "but not mine. I'm Seraphina Silverwood, and I've been waiting 18 years for your wolf to break free. I had to hide, to wait until you were strong enough, until your mate found you." She looked at Caspian with approval. "The Shadow King and the Eclipse Bringer, as prophesied. I have so many questions. After you survive." Seraphina raised her hand, and moonlight condensed around them. "Your wolf isn't just any wolf, granddaughter. She's a moon wolf, the last of her kind, and she's very angry. The training that followed was intense, but necessary, and an hour later, Lyra understood her true nature." The ceremonial grounds of the lunar gallows looked like an amphitheater of nightmares. Hundreds of wolves, surrounding a blood-stained circle, and at the center stood Theron, already shifted into his massive brown wolf. But it was Lyra's entrance that made everyone gasp. She walked in still human, moonlight trailing from her footsteps. "Where's your wolf, little healer?" Theron's voice echoed through the pack link. "Too scared to shift?" Lyra closed her eyes, remembering Seraphina's words. "Your wolf has been caged so long. When you release her, it will be an explosion." "I'm not wolfless," Lyra said quietly, opening her eyes. They blazed pure white. "I never was." The change erupted Lyra's form, exploded into moonlight, and when it faded, gasps filled the air. Her wolf was massive, with pure white fur that seemed to glow from within, marked with constellation patterns, and her eyes held the cosmos themselves. Not dyed. Lyra's wolf spoke directly into everyone's minds. Hidden, bound, caged, but never gone. Theron attacked without warning, using his experience and brutal strength. But Lyra moved like moonlight itself, fluid, untouchable. Their battle was fierce, with Theron's experience against Lyra's raw, unleashed power. "You kept me from my mate," her wolf snarled, slamming Theron down. "You made us scrub floors while you knew we were royalty." But Theron wasn't an alpha for nothing. He pulled a hidden silver blade forbidden in honor combat and threw it at her. Time slowed. Lyra shifted mid-leap, not to human, but to something between. The war form of the moon healers, 9 feet tall, catching the blade and crushing it to dust. "Yield," she commanded, holding Theron by the throat. "Never," he choked. "I'm not you," Lyra said, dropping him. "But I know your secret, how you poisoned the previous alpha before challenging him. Yield, or everyone learns the truth." "I yield," Theron gasped quickly. The eruption was deafening. Lyra walked to where Iris was chained and freed her with a touch. "By the laws of the lunar gallows, I claim my freedom and that of Iris Moonweaver." Vera stepped forward, rage twisting her features. "You think you're special now?" But before she could continue, a howl split the night, not from any wolf present, but from beyond. Dozens of howls followed, all calling, "Eclipse! Eclipse! Eclipse!" "The feral wolves," Matthias breathed. "They've heard the eclipse bringer has awakened." Among those howls came something else, something that made even Caspian tense. A roar that shook the mountains, followed by a booming voice. "Where is my daughter?" The voice belonged to Fenrir Darkfang, the savage king of the Northlands. And when Ravenna stepped forward with tears to whisper, "Father," Lyra realized the notorious woman was the least dangerous member of her bloodline. 20 years I've searched for you, Ravenna." Fenrir emerged, 7 feet of scarred muscle and barely contained violence. 20 years since you ran with my grandchild. You killed her mate." Ravenna's composure cracked. "You killed Marcus." "He was weak," Fenrir said simply. "And look, his weakness bred a granddaughter so fragile she went feral from grief." From the forest emerged a wolf unlike any other, its fur shifting colors like oil, eyes completely mad. Ravenna cried out, running toward her daughter Selena, but the feral wolf didn't recognize her. Only Fenrir's intervention saved her from attack. "This is what awaits wolves who lose their mates," he said, holding the thrashing wolf. "Unless the eclipse bringer intervenes." Lyra stepped forward instinctively. The feral wolf went still, whimpering at her presence. "I can feel the break in her soul," Lyra whispered. "Like a wound that won't stop bleeding." She reached out with Moonlight, but when she touched Selena, she screamed. Black veins spread up her arm. "The corruption!" she gasped. "To heal it, I have to absorb it. But there's so much. Then let us share it, Iris said suddenly. Through pack bonds. If enough wolves help. The Omega is right, Matthias agreed. Multiple packs could dilute the corruption. You'd risk everything on an Omega's theory? Fenrir laughed. Yes, Caspian said firmly. Wolves from every pack present joined hands, forming a circle. Even Fenrir participated, grumbling. Power flowed between them all. Shadow Crown, Poison Fang, Crimson Ridge, even the savage wolves. But as they began the healing, Selena's body convulsed. When she spoke, her voice was ancient and wrong. The eclipse rises. 7 fragments of creation exist, 7 pieces of the moon goddess's own heart, scattered when the first eclipse bringer fell to darkness. Gather them before the convergence in 3 moons, or the devourer awakens. The message delivered. Selena collapsed. But when she opened her eyes again, they were clear. Sane. Mother? She whispered, and Ravenna sobbed with joy. How? Everyone asked. The prophecies? Power cleansed her temporarily. Lyra understood. But we need the fragments to make it permanent. Fragments of creation? Caspian asked. Ancient artifacts, Seraphina explained. Each holds part of the moon goddess's power. Legend says an eclipse bringer who gathers all 7 can reshape reality itself or destroy it. Thunder rolled across the clear sky. 3 moons, Fenrir said grimly. Not much time. Then we start now, Lyra decided. The first fragment, I can feel it calling. It's close. Where? Caspian asked. Lyra's eyes turned toward the ancient ruins beyond the pack territories, the Bloodstone Caverns. But, she hesitated, someone else is already there, someone familiar. The Bloodstone Caverns should have been 3 days away, but space itself seemed to bend, pulling them forward until they arrived in mere hours, and standing at the entrance was someone who shouldn't exist. Hello, sister, the woman said, and Lyra's world shattered. Standing before her was her twin, Arya, who had supposedly died at birth. You held a body, Arya explained, seeing Seraphina's shock. A changeling. The Shadow Council stole me, raised me in secret, trained me to be a weapon. They told me every day that my twin lived in luxury while I suffered. She stepped forward, and Lyra could feel it, an identical power humming in Arya's veins. They lied to both of us, Lyra said. I scrubbed floors believing I was wolfless. While I was tortured, Arya snarled. Experimented on. But here's the truth, I don't want to fight you, Lyra. I want us to work side by side. We're 2 halves of the same whole. Twin eclipse bringers, Seraphina breathed. The prophecy spoke of this. When the divided moon becomes whole, the choice of creation or destruction rests in unified hands. The Shadow Council is already dead, Arya said casually. I killed them all when I escaped. The revelation hung heavy, but no one mourned the corrupt council. Then let's work as one, Lyra offered her hand. Arya looked at it for a long moment, then clasped it. The moment their hands touched, power erupted, not destructive, but harmonizing. They were indeed 2 halves of a greater whole. The first fragment, Arya said. I've been guarding it, waiting for you. It's inside the cavern, but it requires both of us to claim it safely. Together, the twins entered the Bloodstone Caverns, their combined light illuminating ancient murals, depicting the first eclipse bringer's fall and the fragment's creation. At the center lay a crystal pulsing with pure creative force, the fragment of hope. Together? Lyra asked. As we should have been from the start, Arya agreed. They reached for it simultaneously, and the fragment split, half merging with each twin. Power flowed through them, but balanced between two souls, it remained controlled. One down, Arya said, her eyes now flickering with starlight. 6 to go. The second fragment's location came through a vision shared between the twins, the whispering woods, where madness and wisdom were one. But when they arrived, they found the forest under attack by corrupted wolves, bearing the mark of the devourer. Hollow ones, Fenrir growled, wolves who gave themselves to the devourer willingly. They're soulless now, just hunger and void. The hollow ones attacked without warning, their forms seeming to eat light itself. The battle was fierce, with even Caspian struggling against their unnatural nature. But Lyra and Arya, working in perfect synchronization, began to turn the tide. Where Lyra's light touched, Arya's identical power reinforced it. They moved like dancers, covering each other's weaknesses. There! Iris pointed deeper into the woods. I can sense something, a presence that's both mad and wise. They fought their way forward until they reached a clearing where an ancient woman sat. Her hair white as bone, her eyes swirling with rainbow colors. The oracle of madness, she laughed. Or wisdom. I forget which. I've been guarding this fragment for so long. I've become it. She held up the second fragment, a sphere that constantly shifted between order and chaos. To claim it, she said, answer this. What is the difference between creation and destruction? There is none, the twins said in unison. They're the same force viewed from different perspectives. The oracle smiled. You understand. The fragment is yours. But know this 5 remain, and others seek them. The devourer has awakened its greatest servant. Who? Caspian demanded. The first eclipse bringer, the oracle whispered before fading away. The one who became the devourer itself. It remembers what it was, and wants to be whole again. The fragment of wisdom, madness split between the twins, and with it came knowledge locations of the remaining fragments, but also a terrible truth. The final fragment, Arya said, her face pale. It's not hidden in a place. It's hidden in a person, Lyra finished. Someone, we know. They looked around their group, suspicion and fear growing. 3 moons, Iris said quietly, and when everyone looked at her, she touched her chest. I can feel it. It's been inside me all along. The fragment of innocence. That's why I never manifested as a strong wolf. The fragment suppressed my nature to hide itself. Then we protect you, Caspian declared. Your pack now, permanently. But even as they made this vow, thunder rolled closer, and in the distance, they could see darkness spreading across the land like a plague. The devourer was stirring, and time was running out faster than they'd thought. The third fragment called from the sanctuary of last light, but when they arrived, they found it already claimed by Lysander Silverwood, Lyra and Arya's grandfather, who should have been dead for 50 years. My beautiful granddaughters, he said, his eyes black with corruption but his smile genuine. I've been waiting in the void between life and death, sustained by the devourer's power. It sent me to make you an offer. You're not our grandfather, Arya said coldly. You're a puppet. I am both, Lysander replied sadly. I remember loving your grandmother, remember fighting the devourer and losing. But I also remember 50 years of torment that broke me. The fragment of despair I carry has shown me the truth all struggles end in failure. Better to accept the end peacefully. He held up the fragment, dark as night and cold as the void. Join the devourer willingly, he offered. It will preserve your essence forever. You'll never suffer, never fail, never lose each other again. never live either, Lyra countered. Is that so bad? Lysander asked. Look at your path gathering fragments that will either corrupt you or force you to make an impossible choice. Every eclipse bringer before you has failed. Why would you be different? Because there are two of us, Arya said firmly. We balance each other. Because we're not alone, Lyra added, looking at her pack, her mate, her friends. Every other eclipse bringer tried to bear the burden solo. We won't make that mistake. Lysander's expression grew sad. Then I must take the fragments you carry by force. The Devourer commands it. The battle was devastating. Lysander wielded despair like a weapon, making warriors collapse under the weight of their own hopelessness. Even Caspian struggled as the fragment attacked his spirit rather than his body. But Iris' small, overlooked iris began to glow with soft golden light. The fragment of innocence, she said, her voice carrying new power. It's the opposite of despair. Hope was never the true counter innocence is. The belief that things can be good, despite evidence to the contrary. Her light pushed back Lysander's darkness, and in that moment of balance, the twins struck. Not with violence, but with memory projecting images of who Lysander had been before corruption, the love he'd shared with Seraphina, the hope he'd once carried. Remember who you were, they said together. Lysander screamed as the fragment of despair was torn from him, splitting between the twins. But without it sustaining him, his form began to fade. Thank you, he whispered, reaching for Seraphina one last time. Protect them, my love. The Devourer. It's not evil. It's just hungry and alone. So terribly alone. He dissolved into starlight, finally at peace. 3 fragments each, Arya counted, plus Iris's hidden one. That's 7 total. But before they could celebrate, the ground shook violently. Cracks appeared in reality itself, not in the earth, but in the air like broken glass. Through those cracks, they could see it, the Devourer. Not a creature, but a living void, an emptiness that had once been the first eclipse bringer, corrupted beyond recognition by holding all 7 fragments alone. Come, its voice echoed across dimensions. Complete the cycle. Become what you were meant to be. The convergence, Seraphina gasped. It's not in 3 moons, it's now. The fragments gathering has triggered it. Reality began to collapse as the convergence started, dimensions folding into each other, and through the chaos came an army of hollow ones, led by something that made everyone freeze. It was Theron, but transformed. His body merged with void energy, more powerful than ever. Did you think yielding meant I was defeated? He laughed, his voice echoing with the Devourer's power. I volunteered to become its herald. Better to rule in the void than serve in the light. Behind him, several Crimson Ridge wolves had also transformed, including Vera. Her jealousy turned into void-touched strength. You took everything from me, Vera snarled at Lyra. My position, my pride, my future. Now, I'll take everything from you. The battle erupted on multiple fronts. Hollow ones swarmed from every crack in reality, while the twins tried desperately to hold the dimensions together with their fragment powers. But they were losing. For every crack they sealed, 2 more opened. For every hollow one defeated, 3 more emerged. We need all 7 fragments united. Arya shouted over the chaos. But Iris, Lyra began. I know what I have to do, Iris interrupted, stepping forward. I've always known, deep down. The fragment of innocence can't be taken. It can only be given freely. She placed her hand over her heart, and golden light began to shine through her skin. But if I give it up, I'll become just a normal Omega, maybe less than that. The fragment has been part of me since birth. Iris, no, Lyra pleaded. It's my choice, Iris said firmly. My sacrifice. Let me save everyone for once, instead of being saved. She pulled the fragment from her chest, a sphere of pure golden light that made everyone weep just to look at it. The moment it left her, Iris collapsed, her body growing cold. No! Lyra caught her, pouring healing light into the Omega, but Iris was fading. That's when something unexpected happened. Vera, corrupted and void-touched, suddenly screamed and charged not at Lyra, but at the other hollow ones. She saved me once, Vera cried, tears streaming down her corrupted face. When we were children, before I became cruel, she shared her food when I had none. I forgot kindness, but I remember it now. Her void-touched power turned on her own allies, creating chaos in their ranks. The distraction gave Caspian and the others the opening they needed. The fragment. Arya grabbed the innocence fragment, but instead of absorbing it herself, she did something unexpected. She pushed it into Lyra. You were always the creator between us. Take the fourth. I'll hold with three. The moment the fourth fragment entered Lyra, her power exploded outward. She became light itself, healing Iris with one hand while holding reality together with the other. But the Devourer wasn't waiting. It pushed through the largest crack, its void form solidifying into something horrific, a massive wolf made of emptiness, with eyes that had seen the birth and death of universes. Eclipse bringers. It spoke directly into their minds. I was like you once, full of hope, full of purpose. But the fragments showed me the truth: everything ends. Creation only delays the inevitable. Join me in accepting the final piece. You're wrong, Lyra said, standing tall despite her exhaustion. Endings aren't final. They're transformations. Every end is a new beginning, Arya added, moving to stand beside her sister. Prove it, the Devourer challenged. Show me one thing worth preserving in this flawed existence. The twins looked at each other, then at their pack, at Caspian's unwavering love, at Iris's sacrifice, at Vera's redemption, at Ravenna protecting her daughter, at Fenrir standing with former enemies, at Seraphina's endless hope. This, they said in unison, connection, choice, the ability to change. They reached for each other's hands, and their Cladius Pretus fragments resonated 7 between them, perfectly balanced. The power that flowed wasn't creation or destruction, but transformation. We offer you a choice, Lyra said to the Devourer. Stop trying to end everything. Instead, let us transform you back to who you were, before the fragments corrupted you. Impossible. I am too far gone. Nothing is too far gone, Arya insisted. That's what family taught us. Together, the twins reached out with their combined power, not to fight the Devourer, but to embrace it. Their light touched its void, and for the first time in millennia, the Devourer remembered what it was like to feel something other than hunger. The transformation was agonizing for everyone involved. The twins poured their fragment power into the Devourer, while their pack channeled their strength through the bonds. And in that moment of unity, something unprecedented happened. The Devourer began to remember its name. Eclipse, it whispered, its void form starting to power, solidify. My name was Eclipse. I was the first eclipse bringer, and I had a family once. As memories returned, the monstrous void wolf began to shrink, becoming more solid, more real. The hunger that had defined it for millennia began to fade, replaced by something else: regret. I tried to perfect the world, Eclipse said. its voice becoming more human. I gathered all 7 fragments to fix every flaw, heal every hurt. But the power, it showed me that to perfect something, you must first destroy all imperfection. And soon, I was destroying everything. The moon goddess had to shatter you, Seraphina understood. Turn you into the devourer to prevent you from unmaking existence. But you also shattered the fragments, Eclipse continued, now wolf-sized, its void form gaining color silver and black, like the twins' power combined. Scattered them so no one could repeat my mistake. Except we're not you, Lyra said firmly. We're not trying to perfect anything. We're trying to preserve it, Arya added, flaws and all. Eclipse looked at them with eyes that were no longer void but filled with stars. You would keep a flawed world? A flawed world where people can choose to be better? Caspian interjected. Is worth more than a perfect world where choice doesn't exist. Even I chose, Vera said weakly from where she lay, the void corruption leaving her body. I chose to remember kindness. Eclipse studied them all, this messy, imperfect pack of former enemies now united. Then perhaps I can choose too. But the fragments, they're too powerful for any one being, or even two. Then we share them, Iris suggested, finally standing with help from Lyra's healing. Not just between the twins, but among all of us. Dilute the power so no one bears too much. That's never been done, Eclipse said. The fragments could kill you all. Or, Fenrir grunted, they could make us all stronger. What's life without risk? We're pack now, Ravenna declared, her daughter Selena nodding beside her. All of us, regardless of our origins. Pack shares burdens. Eclipse looked at the twins. You would trust them with this power? We'd trust them with our lives, the twins said together. Eclipse made a decision that changed everything. Its form dissolved not into void but into pure starlight. Then I give you my essence freely, not as the devourer, but as the first eclipse bringer. Take my knowledge, my power, but learn from my mistakes. The starlight divided into motes that touched every wolf present: Caspian, Iris, Vera, Ravenna, Selena, Fenrir, Matthias, even some former hollow ones who'd regained their souls. Each received a tiny fragment of the original power, not enough to corrupt, but enough to change them. The 7 fragments themselves transformed, no longer separate artifacts, but part of a distributed network of power among the pack. Lyra and Arya remained the focal points, but the burden was shared. The Lyra and Arya remained. Convergence. Someone gasped, pointing at the sky. The cracks in reality were healing, dimensions separating back to normal. But the world had changed. Magic, long dormant, sparked back to life. Wolves who'd been ordinary discovered new gifts. The rigid pack hierarchies began to shift towards something more flexible. We did it, Arya breathed. We all did it, Lyra corrected, pulling her sister into an embrace. Caspian wrapped his arms around his mate, their bond humming with new depth. So what now? Now, Seraphina said with a smile, we rebuild, not just the packs, but the entire system. No more hiding eclipse bringers. No more binding wolves' true nature. No more rigid hierarchies based solely on strength. A new world, Iris said softly. One where even omegas matter, where former enemies can become family, Ravenna added, looking at her father. Fenrir huffed but smiled slightly. Don't push it, but perhaps the savage lands could use some civilization, and the civilized lands could use some savagery. Vera approached Lyra hesitantly. I'm sorry. For everything. I let jealousy turn me into a monster. Lyra studied her former tormentor, then extended her hand. We all have the capacity for both monster and hero. The choice is what matters. Vera took her hand, tears flowing freely. As the pack, their new, strange, powerful pack, began to discuss the future, Theron's corrupted form finally solidified back to normal. He looked around at the united wolves, at his lost power, at the new world being born. "What about me?" he asked bitterly. "You have a choice too," Lyra said. "Exile yourself and live with your crimes, or stay and work to earn redemption. But you'll never hold power over others again." Theron looked at the gathered wolves, saw no sympathy in their eyes, and made his choice. He walked away into the forest, alone. "Will he survive?" Iris asked. "That's his choice too," Arya replied. As the sun rose on their transformed world, the twins stood side by side, no longer weapons but architects of a new age. The prophecy had been fulfilled, but not as anyone expected. The eclipse bringers were supposed to choose between creation and destruction. Caspian mused. "We chose transformation instead," Lyra said, leaning into his embrace. "And connection," Arya added, surrounded by their unlikely pack. In the distance, where reality had cracked, new paths appeared, roads to realms previously hidden, opportunities for exploration and growth. The world had become larger, stranger, more wonderful. 7 fragments shared among many, Seraphina said, looking at her transformed pack with pride. "The power preserved but the burden distributed. You've done what no previous generation could. You've broken the cycle." "No," Lyra corrected gently. "We've transformed it into something better." A howl rose from someone in the pack, joyful, free, celebrating. Others joined in, their voices mixing in harmony rather than dominance. Even Iris howled, her omega voice no longer weak but part of the greater song. And in that moment, in that choice to sing together rather than alone, the new world truly began. But the story wasn't over. In the shadows between realms, something stirred, not evil, not hungry, but curious. The transformation of the devourer had awakened things long sleeping, and change, once started, has a way of spreading. "Next time," Arya said, sensing the same thing her twin did, "we might face something that doesn't want transformation. Then we'll face it the same way we faced this," Lyra replied. "Side by side. All of us," Caspian added, and the pack nodded as one. The eclipse bringers had risen, chosen, and transformed not just themselves but their entire world. And in that transformation, they'd learned the greatest truth of all. Power shared is not power diminished, it's power multiplied. The full moon rose that night, but it looked different, brighter, somehow more alive, as if it too had been waiting for the world to transform. And in the moonlight, 2 sisters who should have grown up together finally had the chance to become what they were always meant to be. Not weapons, not saviors, but family. The beginning of their true story had finally begun.